So good morning, everyone. I'm here today to present Bonesupport. Bonesupport is an orthobiologics company, a Swedish orthobiologics company, and we have a unique bioceramic product platform for treatment of bone voids. So a bit short about the company, possibly. The company origins from clinical research made by Professor Lars Lidgren at the University Hospital of Lund, and he has done significant research on bone healing. And the patents and the research from this has given birth to Bonesupport. We are 75 people employed, and we operate in a majority of the European markets, as well as in the US, which is our biggest sales market. We have so far 3 products commercialized, and these products are validated by more than 130 peer-to-peer review clinical abstracts and publications. Last year we had sales of about 130 million Swedish krona. So talking about Bonesupport and what is it that we do, I think we start by looking at what is the problem that we solve. Well, as you know, the bone in the human body has a fantastic ability to heal itself. But there are several occasions where that healing doesn't work. One of these occasions is if there's a severe trauma. Think traffic accident, for example. Then you have a fracture of a bone, and if the ends of the bones do not meet due to the injury, then there is a bone gap, there's a bone void. And this prevents the bone from actually completing its healing cycle. Now this can occur in trauma, it can occur in revision arthroplasty, which basically is a replacement of a hip or a knee prosthesis, if there is an infection present, or if there's a tumor. A bone void cannot be left unattended. It needs to be treated. Otherwise you have mechanical instability, and a bone void can also lead to much more severe indications. So how common is a bone void? There are about 3.8 million procedures each year treating bone voids. Bonesupport is focusing on a subsegment of this market. We are targeting 650,000 procedures a year. This is my pointer. We're targeting 650,000 procedures a year. Now, our technology most likely is applicable on the total market of 3.8, but we are focusing on the area where we have today clinical evidence and clinical studies showing the efficacy and safety of the product. The 650,000 procedures make up about 580 million US dollars of sales annually. And this is how this is split. If we look at the European market, for example, the blue pie in this pie chart is autograft. Autograft means that to treat the bone void, the surgeon will open up the skin at the hip bone, carve out bone tissue, which then is put into the bone void to heal it. And this normally works very well because it's your own bone tissue, so it's well accepted by the body. But in about 1 out of 5 procedures, it leads to complications. Whenever you have another surgery, whenever you open up the skin barrier, there's a risk for infection. Another issue is that up to 40% of the patients that have bone tissue taken from the hip experience pain up to 2 years after the surgery. So ironically, the fracture itself might heal and the patient is fine, but has constant pain from the hip bone, which is the donor site where the bone tissue was taken from. The red part of the diagram shows allograft, and allograft is bone tissue taken from another donor, usually from a dead person, from a bone bank. There are some risks with using allograft, and there are some thoughts that using bone from other individuals could also be transmitting diseases. So there are some doubts on this treatment. DBM, the pink part, is the same as allograft, but more processed. And this is a big treatment in the US due to the reimbursement rule there. And then finally, the purple part of this pie chart is the synthetic bone graft. And this is where you would find our product, Cerament. So what is it that we offer then? Our product, Cerament, is a synthetic bone graft substitute. It is injectable, so it's minimally invasive, and it has the same composition as your own bone. So when you inject it into the bone void, it stabilizes the bone void, and after 6 to 12 months, it has been completely resorbed and replaced with your own living healthy bone. Now this would, in our view, in our vision, replace the need to harvest bone from the patient's own hip. One of the biggest challenges for an orthopedic surgeon is if there's an infection present. That is why two of our products, Cerament G and Cerament V, are eluting antibiotic substance, so either gentamicin or vancomycin. So this way, you can heal the bone void, you can treat the bone void, and you can prevent the infection or treat the infection all in one procedure, versus historically, this took place over several procedures. So how are we performing then? This chart shows our sales over time. On this axis you have million Swedish krona, and on this axis you see each quarter since beginning of 2014. And the sales number here is last 12 months, so it's in 12 months increment. The light blue part of the bar is North America, and the dark blue is Europe and rest of the world. And what you can see is a very strong and steady sales growth. And it shows you that Cerament is a technology, is a product that is very well accepted, an increasing amount of loyal users. In the US, in North America, we are operating through Zimmer Biomet, one of the biggest orthopedic companies in the industry. And during last year, Zimmer Biomet had quite some internal issues, quite some internal challenges. And they couldn't keep up with the demand from their customers on Cerament. And this was visible in our sales line. So we started a strategic review in springtime. And we came with the conclusion that for Cerament and Bonesupport to reach its full potential, we need to have a strong commercial platform in the US, which is the biggest market in the world for these products. And that led us to terminate the distribution agreement and replace Zimmer Biomet with a network of independent distributors that will have a much broader reach to the market opportunity than what Zimmer Biomet could have. This inevitably, of course, leads to a temporary sales dip, but we are convinced that this move will take us on strong sales growth going forward. The details of our strategic review could be found on our website. So you can download the full presentation there. You can also see the entire video uptake from the presentations, where we're giving all the details behind our considerations and our decisions for the strategy. But in short, our strategy rests on 3 pillars. Innovation, clearly that's in our DNA, that's where we come from. We are the most innovative product in the orthopedic market today. To have leading clinical and health economic data to validate our benefits. This is important both for the surgeons that we're talking to as well as the payers. And finally, to have an effective commercial platform. I will talk about the 2 latter pillars now, And very recently we had some positive news from one of our clinical studies, and that's what I will show you now. Since autograft, remember taking hip bone to heal a bone void, is the golden standard, Bonesupport decided 5 years ago to set out on a study to prove that CERAMENT could replace autograft. This study started in 2013. It has enrolled close to 140 patients over 20 trauma centers in Germany. And these patients had a tibia plateau fracture. And that means a fracture in the tibia just below the knee, where the tibia meets the knee joint. And the patients were looked at from a number of different parameters. And last week, on Monday, came the first results. And I'm very happy and pleased that indeed the top-line data shows that CERAMENT is as good as autograft. Now that leads me to a few different conclusions. One, CERAMENT is the only product of its kind that has such a level 1 clinical data with statistical significance. Number two, this gives us an opportunity to replace autograft in those kind of injuries. And there are no less than 25,000 procedures per year in the top 5 European markets where autograft is used for exactly the tibia fracture that I mentioned before. So we see, of course, an enormous opportunity now that after all these years we have this clinical study showing positive effect. And even more so, this study will in the full length be published in the first quarter of next year. So we will submit to a scientific journal in January. And we believe that the results from this study will be able to change standard of care so that there will be less autograft used in the future and more synthetic product like CERAMENT. So before I mention how important it is for Bonesupport to have a strong commercial platform, and I also mentioned that we have terminated the agreement with Zimmer Biomet and replaced it with independent distributors, I'm pleased to say that from October 22nd, we went live with a setup, with a network of no less than 25 independent distributors that covers much more of the market opportunity in the US. Zimmer Biomet covered approximately 1/3 of the market. But our new setup, with 25 distributors, they have access to more than 500 sales reps. We reach much broader in the US market. So we have spent the last couple of months in training and educating the salespeople. As a comparison, Zimmer Biomet had about 300 sales reps present in the US market. And now we have more than 500. So you can see this is a move of strength, and this is a move for a more offensive future. So I would like to conclude my presentation, and what I've shared with you today is that Bonesupport in 2018 have made some major steps to secure that we reach the ultimate potential of our technology. We have created a much stronger commercial platform in the US. In addition to that, in Europe, in the countries where we have direct sales presence, which is the Nordics, Germany, UK and Switzerland, we have close to doubled our sales force, displaying the strong trust that we have in our technology. In addition to this, we will reach the full potential by gaining further share from autograft, but also from gaining shares from other bone graft substitutes that do not have the strong clinical evidence that we do. And we do that on the basis on the Certify study that I presented to you before. And we know from previous clinical studies that with autograft, up to 40% of the patients have pain that lasts for up to 2 years afterwards. But hopefully with this clinical study, there will be an end to that. And finally, we're building a market segment of prophylaxis for those patients that have a high risk for infection, like a trauma, a severe trauma. And we do that with our CERAMENT G and our CERAMENT V product that are eluting antibiotics. In 2020, we will deliver another really big clinical study, which we call Fortify. This study looks at CERAMENT G with trauma patients and an open fracture. It means that your bone has penetrated the skin barrier. There's a high risk of infection. And this study, we hope, will pave the way for getting CERAMENT G registered in the US, which is, of course, a very big market opportunity for us. What does this mean then? Well, 2018 will be a transition year for us. We're making a lot of big decisions and a lot of big changes that we believe will strategically better equip us for the future. In 2019, we expect a significant sales growth as we are getting all the salespeople in the US up and running and getting a direct access to our customers and target group. After 2019, we predict that we will grow sales with 40% per year. And we are well funded. We have cash that will last us well to execute on our strategy. So exciting times ahead. I hope that you have enjoyed this presentation. And I hope also that you feel that Bonesupport is a company to keep an eye on. We have, in the near-term and mid-term future, a significant amount of events that will bring inflection points on this journey and that will help us to realize the full potential of CERAMENT. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Emil.
Thank you.
Okay, so really interesting development. Looking at the recent results, then that you say you presented good results. You can show that it's equivalent, but without the complicated surgery that you have to do. So if this would then affect the standard of care for this kind of what do you call it? Procedure. Yeah. What would that mean for you in the mid to long term, basically?
Well, it would of course mean that our current sales base would increase significantly. Today, if you look in Europe, there's 1/3 of all the procedures where you have a bone void, out of this 650, that autograft is still used. I believe that's because it's a proven method, and I also believe that it comes down to tradition. You do what you've always have done.
Yeah.
I've met many surgeons who says, well, it works well for me until there are some clinical evidence to show something else. And that's the point we have arrived at right now.
Yeah.
So what we will do is we will show these results at several congresses, and our sales force will also be equipped with presentations and abstracts from this study to spread the gospel that there is no longer the need to expose the patient to the discomfort, the pain, the extra surgery that is required to harvest bone from the hip.
And then again, fighting tradition can be a really uphill battle. So are you working with specific key opinion leaders in different markets in order to spread the gospel, as you say? Or will it only be your own sales force doing that work?
Well, the study was done in 20 trauma centers in Germany. And these are some of the most renowned trauma centers that there is. Of course, these physicians that have led the investigation and study, they have seen the results with their own eyes. And I met them at a recent event, and the response and the feedback was overwhelmingly positive. So I also expect that all the people that have been part of this study also participate actually in spreading now the communication that there is a new and more progressive alternative.
They will be part of your sales force unknowingly. But then again, making this strategic decision to basically terminate your current distribution platform in the US, which is such a big market, that's actually quite a ballsy move, because you were making money there. But when you expect that move to pay out fully, because it's a huge investment, of course.
It is. I've done this before, so I lived also and worked in the US before. And whenever you do such a bold move, there's naturally a disruption. And that's what we're seeing now, and that's what was on my graph. You asked me, when will we see the positive benefits of it? Immediately. Because there were always physicians that saw CERAMENT at conventions or congresses, and they called to head office and said, we would like to learn more about this product. But if they were not a customer of Zimmer Biomet, there was not so high likelihood that they actually got that information.
Okay.
Now we have a much more direct access to our physicians and the surgeons that want to use the product. So I expect that there will be immediate benefits from that. Then if your question is, how long will it take before we're back on the same sales level? I couldn't tell.
Okay.
But I have great confidence that this is the right move.
Yeah. Do we have any questions from the audience? Yes? What, please?
2 questions, Emil. First, at what point in sales, your sales, will you achieve break-even given the change in the strategy? That's the first question. And the other, how does the industry at large handle the duplication, the vast duplication of efforts, especially on the marketing and sales side? i.e., how do you see the landscape shaping up? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. The first part of that question I unfortunately cannot answer, because we do not give guidance and forecast. So I apologize for that, but that day will come, be sure. The other part is, how does the industry cope with the duplication of effort? I agree that's a bit troublesome, because there's a lot of noise out in the market, and this industry is shaped by a few really big orthopedic companies with big sales forces. And what we have noticed is that it takes time to establish new procedures. And that's why Bonesupport has taken the bold move to invest in clinical studies that really shows the efficacy of the product. Then it's not just us and our salespeople, but it's actually proven to have a certain effect. And we have found that companies that have that level of clinical data have a much faster market penetration. And that's also what we can see if we compare our sales to other companies with same size. Thank you.
So you mentioned then in 2019, you have, in short term, you have lots of inflection points and interesting milestones. Which one are you looking forward to the most personally?
I look forward very much now to see the Certify study published, so that we have the full readout. The other part that I look forward to is, in the beginning of 2019, we are confident to present health economic data, because we believe that having a product like this with the benefits, it will also show great effects on lowering healthcare cost for these kind of treatments. Shorter hospital stay, for example.
We're looking forward to that.
Me too.
For sure. Thank you very much, Emil.
Thank you.